Hey friends, I'm E. Prabilski, and this is Authority, where I spell the T on the publishing industry, and yes, that is in fact the joke. I've been an editor for 17 years, and I have a couple of books out on the process of writing and publishing books, and today I wanted to talk about my favorite tools for my writing and publishing businesses. I have been doing this for a long while and I've tested out a whole lot of things, and I wanted to share some of the ones that really worked for me because what tools are out there, what do I use, how do I do this is one of those questions that I hear the most from my coaching clients. And since I was hearing it all the time from them, I figured that other people probably would like to know. So, here we are. I'm going to break this into a few different categories. We're going to do 4 different categories here. We're going to do writing and editing, publishing, workflow and organization, and marketing. All of these are tools I actually use myself and am using currently, and these are things that work well for me. I'm sure there are things that I have never heard of. I'm sure there are tools that you love that I'm going to probably hate, but these are definitely ones that I personally use pretty much every day, and if not every day, at least once a week. So let's get into it before we, deal with the preamble any further. So writing and editing, YWriter is the first one I want to mention. It is kind of like an open source Scrivener. I use it for drafting all of my novels. I draft them out in YWriter, and I find the layout and the way it works just really tickles my brain. And it doesn't cost me anything. It is an open source software, so I love it for that. It has a lot of features I don't use, like character profiles and all kinds of other stuff that I do in other software, but might be really useful for you. But something about the way that YWriter organizes chapters and scenes and stuff just it works for me. I also like that it tracks my writing habits, so it sees how much time I spend writing in a day, how many words I get. I can get those kinds of metrics out of it. Where things like Word for Windows, I have to do that manually by writing in things in and calculating that myself. So I prefer to write in YWriter for my first draft. Which kind of brings me to the second one, Plotter. And I mentioned that I don't really use YWriter's character profiles and so on because I do that in Plotter. When I first bought Plotter, my reaction was like, holy crap, where have you been all my life? I cannot imagine writing books without it at this point. Like, it is my writing brain. It has the character profiles, it has location information, it has faction information, it has the timeline, it has my outlines, it has all of that stuff in there, and it is only getting better over time. Like, I cannot speak highly enough of Plotter. I really love the software. I've used it also for things like planning newsletter content and social media content in the past. It's not designed for that, but the timeline lets you kind of do some neat stuff like that. So I've used it that way and really found it great. So you can use it for more than just holding character profiles. It also works pretty well for nonfiction if you're trying to organize scenes and figure out what goes where and what information you want to have where. It's mostly designed for fiction, but you can find ways to make it work for other things. And like I said, I think that's one of my top pieces of software for writing of all time. The next one is one that editors, you will know this, but writers, you probably won't. It's called Perfectit. It is a plugin for Microsoft Word that is just, it's incredibly powerful. And it's essentially a collection of macros, if you know what those are. Another thing about it that I really like is that it isn't AI. It's been around since before AI was a thing, and it doesn't use AI. So it doesn't use large language models. It is just programmed to do certain things, and it does them very, very well. And it conforms to whatever style guide you want it to conform to. I have it actually connected to my CMOS, Chicago Manual of Style, and I have it connected to my subscription to that, so it is updated on the CMOS and will edit things in conformation with the CMOS's rules, which I find really helpful. And it'll tell me what the CMOS's opinion on something is, and I can just decide whether or not this is something I want to do or not. You can also set up your own style guide. For those of you who are like, what the hell are you talking about? A style guide is essentially the choices you make with punctuation, like whether or not you put spaces around em dashes, whether or not you use straight or curly quotes. It also does things like consistently tells you, like, are you hyphenating this phrase consistently? Are you using this descriptive phrase consistently? Are these names spelled the same way consistently? Is the capitalization consistent? That kind of consistency stuff will save you a ton of money with an editor because if we have to go through all of it ourselves and pull out our hair, that is hours of our day and that takes time. And it's something that Perfected is really good at, and I cannot speak highly enough of it. Like, if you run your novel through Perfected before sending it to your editor, I'm pretty sure that it will be less money because it will take them fewer hours to edit. It's great stuff. And it just plugs right into Word. It works great for that. No, it does not work with Google Docs. No, I don't think it has a standalone. It's only a Word plugin, so far as I know. Smart Edit is standalone. It used to have a Word plugin, but does no longer. But Smart Edit is also great, but it does some other things. I don't have it on this list because I don't use it as much as I use Perfected, and since it's no longer updated for the Word version, I don't really rely on it as heavily because it can be kind of glitchy. That brings us to the next one, of course, Microsoft Word. I use Microsoft Word for all of my editing. That is what I work in. And once I finished my draft in YWriter, I poured it over to Word to perfect it, and do my real, like, heavy lifting work on it. I don't like Google Docs for this because Google Docs introduces some weird errors a lot of the time. I've noticed when you export it, it has some, like, habits, and it'll sometimes do some weird stuff that causes headaches down the road for actual editing and making sure everything looks right for publishing. It's not the best software for, like, final polish. Like, drafting in Google Docs is fine, but when you really get down to the end, Microsoft Word is still the industry standard for a pretty darn good reason. And as an editor, I know that so many people cannot live without their macros. And macros, for those of you who don't know, are like little programs within Word. You can tell it to do certain things. It's kind of like find and replace on steroids in a way, but you can tell it to do all sorts of stuff. Paul Beverly is the macro deity, and he has a huge number of macros on his website and, like, knows his stuff, but there are things that allow editors to do our jobs more effectively, more efficiently, and clean up common errors and fix things and make manuscripts better faster. Everybody wins. Also, another issue I have with Google Docs is that it tends to hang. If you have a long document with a lot of heavy edits and comments and all this other stuff, it will just crash eventually. Word will too, but it takes a lot longer for Word to crash than it does for Google Docs to hang. At least in my experience, I started having issues at the end of around a 200,000 word book with not Google Docs, with Word. It was right towards the end of that edit. And that's when it started having some problems, and I've had issues with, like, 50,000 words in Google Docs, so they don't really... There's no comparison to me. Like, if you want to draft in Google Docs or you're writing with somebody else and need the collaboration and you don't want to pay for Word 365, I get you. I'm not judging. But Microsoft Word is still the workhorse for a reason. And until something better comes along, that's where we're at. OpenOffice and the other ones also, they tend to introduce weird glitches and, like, style issues on occasion. So they are great for, what they are, but they can't really hold a candle, unfortunately. The next tool I use, and I will mention this, is keyboard shortcuts. When in doubt, try and learn keyboard shortcuts for things. I can't really do the alt codes so well because of the dyscalculia, but keyboard shortcuts will prevent you from having to go from keyboard to mouse as much, and that'll mean you move much faster. Keyboard shortcuts will cut down on times of things, and I use keyboard shortcuts all the time, and it really helps me move more fluidly through things. So if you can learn your keyboard shortcuts, you will find that's very helpful for your writing and your editing. The next slate of tools I've got here is publishing tools. The top of this list is Affinity Publisher. Adobe is an evil overlord and charges monthly subscriptions for software, which drives me up a tree. They don't believe that you own anything anymore. And I jumped ship on them ages ago. I went from Adobe Creative Suite 3 to Affinity Publisher, and I have never looked back. I use that instead of InDesign to create typeset versions of all my books, and I can work with most files. I can't work with, IDD files, but everything else I can work with, including PDFs. It's far more complicated than Atticus, and I will admit that straight up. Atticus is a lot easier, and Vellum is a lot easier also, and they're great programs if you've never done any typesetting before. and they work well for folks. I couldn't. They're good programs, but like it felt for me like I was putting training wheels on my mountain bike because I've been typesetting since Adobe CS3. And while they are fast and you don't need to learn as much to use them, they kind of make all the books look the same. And I couldn't really make them look the way I wanted them to look. Like I'm a font nerd, man. And not being able to get in there and really dig around in the fonts and the styles, like, set my hair on end. So it didn't work for me. So Affinity Publishers where I've landed, and you buy it once and you own it forever. The price is very reasonable. I have nothing but high things to say about them. The next publishing program I can recommend is Calibre, Calibre. It's I'm very bare bones with my ebook formatting, and I do that on purpose because I want it accessible. And if you start adding like a bunch of embedded fonts and images and all kinds of stuff, it starts becoming less accessible, and the files become bigger. And since people can change the fonts and such on their devices to whatever that's best for them to read in, embedding a bunch of fonts doesn't really work super well. And so Calibre for me, it's open source. I can just upload my Word file in there, put in all the metadata, export the EPUBs or whatever else I'm making, and boom, done. This is just for ebooks, so don't use it for PDFs. Don't use it for layout for print. But it works really great for the EPUBs. It works great. It's trustworthy, it's reliable. You can edit the CSS yourself. You can embed fonts in it. You can do everything that Atticus and Vellum can do in there as far as EPUB generation, if you know CSS and code, which I do not. Anybody who knows me well knows that me and code usually ends up with everything upside down and flashing, and me going and getting my web developer friends because I broke it. Yeah, I don't do code, but I know people who do, and the CSS in Calibre is very accessible if you know how to work it. I can find it, I just can't do anything with it without disaster. So I don't. The last of the publishing software I'm going to recommend is Affinity Photo. Much like Affinity Publisher, Affinity Photo works with visual mediums. I strongly recommend it if you're going to be doing any kind of like cover design or making yourself press kits and other stuff. Like, you can do a lot of work in it. I usually make graphics in Affinity Photo, then export them over to the Affinity Publisher, and it does a great job with it. I recommend hiring a professional to do your cover for you. Angel Leia is mine, and she's amazing. I have nothing but the highest of praise for her. But if I have to make a cover myself or make some kind of graphics myself, I also use it for my map artwork. And I do that a lot in Affinity Photo, or if I'm doing it physically, I'll upload it there and get, tweak things and make it look right. But it's great. But you can use it the same way you'd use Photoshop, and I think it's a phenomenal program. Just like with Affinity Publisher, it is not a monthly pay. You just buy it and you own it, and that is it. They come out with a new version every couple of years. You can upgrade to the new version, but the old one works fine, and you buy it once. It's yours. The next segment here we're going to get into is workflow and organization tools, which I know we're all super excited about. The first one I want to mention is Thunderbird. I manage what is, for me, a lot of email addresses. Right now I'm managing 5, which some people will be like, really? That's a lot? Really? But for me it's a lot, so shut up. Thunderbird lets me keep them all in one location and saves me the headache of having to go to different pages for different emails. And I can use email filters, and I have those set up really well in there, nice and neat. And it helps me ensure the emails are going to the right folders and all this other stuff. I love Thunderbird. Also, the add-ons can be great. So I really like Thunderbird to help me keep my brain together. The next piece of software I recommend, it's also open source, by the way. Thunderbird is free. It's Firefox makes Thunderbird. It's theirs. So Mozilla's. The next one I'm going to recommend is another open source piece of software called BeefText, which I don't know why it's called BeefText. The name is interesting. But it's a text expander. And what it does, essentially, is I can type a couple of things and a couple of keystrokes, and it'll replace those couple of keystrokes with another piece of text, something that I have told it, replace this with that. It's sort of like a keyboard shortcut, in a way. And what I use it for is for things like if I'm in a document and I'm editing, and I know a person has a lot of POV errors, right? I will go in there and I will say, I will designate the keystrokes, and then I'll say, and set that up. And then in the comments, I can just type, poke those keystrokes and boom, it'll write like, hey, POV slip here, review, or whatever it is, the text I want to use. And it prevents me from having to type it out over and over again. I also have some of these set up for emails. So like if somebody wants to know what copy editing entails, I have that set up in beef text, and I can just be like, boop, boop, boom, done. And I don't need to reinvent the wheel every time I have to give one of these explanations. And it helps a lot when you have a lot of emails and are interfacing with a lot of things, or people ask the same kind of questions over and over, or you have to use an email signature or something like regularly and you don't have it set up. Like, it's just great for that kind of thing. It saves a lot of trouble. And again, we're back to the keystrokes, like a couple of keystrokes and boom, it's finished, rather than having to do a bunch of typing or go for the mouse. So it's great. I learned about it from the Chicago Guide for Freelance Editors. Well, not that specific program, but text expanders in general from that, and it's great. The next one I'm going to mention is, of course, Notion. Notion is fabulous. I'm using the free version, but you can obviously pay for it. My friend Shell turned me on to Notion, and I've had her on the podcast a couple times. I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little weird today. My allergies are super bad, so I'm struggling. I'm struggling, y'all. Anyway, the free version of Notion is what I'm using right now. And I purchased the Ultimate Brain set of templates, which is phenomenal. And my life is like so much better. I use it for organizing everything. I have all of my projects in here. I have my content in here. I use it to keep a log of my people, like my client list. I have the books I'm reading right now, all the projects I'm engaged in, and I have so many like different spaces set up for myself so that I can just go into that space, find what I need, and get out. It's so nice. You could use it to replace Plotter if you wanted to. There's a ton of templates out there for writers, but at this point, I really love Plotter and I don't want to leave it, and it works really well for me. So I don't have any need to move to Notion, but you could use Notion to do the same job Plotter does if you wanted to. I just found Plotter first, and that's what I use now. So it also has an AI companion that you can pay for. You can use the AI companion to search your databases and search your Notion and give you answers based on things you have in there, as well as other things, I think. I don't know. I don't have it because I don't pay for it, but I know that it's very useful for some people. Like if you have a lot of information in Notion, say you're an author working in there, and you want to pull up information from one of your files and be like, hey, what color is this character's eyes? You can just, it'll pull it up. Stuff like that. So I know it's useful, but I don't really want to pay for it, and at this point, I don't really use Notion that way, so I haven't. But the free version of Notion that I use is extremely robust, and even if you don't buy a set of templates like the Ultimate Brain, which I cannot speak highly enough about, by the way, you can develop your own templates and just set things up to really be how you want them to be. The only downside is it can be really intimidating when you first get into it. If you don't know what you're doing and you're not sure how it all works and what views are and everything, like spend some time, watch some YouTube videos, get comfortable with it. But it's really useful once you've gotten a chance to kind of get over that hump. And I use it to organize my entire life. I've got recipes in here, like it's got everything in here. You can also do things like there's plugins you can use for Google Chrome, which I have, and for other things I have one called Flylighter, which means I can just, and if I find an article or something I want to keep, I will just send it to my Notion in Flylighter, and it'll just copy it into my Notion with all of the information, the links, everything. And I can go check it out later or add it to my resource library if it's something that I want to be like, ooh, I need to reference this later. And it cites it properly, so it's not like you're stealing their content. You're not. It's just like photocopying it and keeping a copy of it so that you can refer to it later. Because it does keep all of the citation and everything, and I don't recommend you steal that, but it's nice for that. And the last one for project management, kind of productivity sort of thing I'm going to mention is Clockify. It is another app that has a free tier, which is the one that I use, but you can pay for it. But honestly, for what most of us authors are doing, the free tier does more than enough. Even as an editor, I use the free tier. I don't see a need to use the paid tier, really. It lets you track your time. and has a mode that just auto tracks what you are looking at on your screen. What is the active program at that moment, and it'll track how much time you spend in which program and everything else. It's great for that kind of thing. And what that kind of allows you to do is it allows you to really dig down into the amount of time you're spending doing what. And you can sort this tracking into projects. So at the end of my Clockify day, I'll go into Clockify and it'll be like, okay, sort it by what program it was, and then I can be like, all of these things were part of this project, all these things were part of this project, and I can really kind of get granular with the data of how I'm spending my time. And when you're an entrepreneur, if you're an indie author, if you're trying to run a business, understanding how you spend your time is really helpful. And sometimes it can be hard to know how you spend your time because you can be like, oh, that only took me 5 minutes. Clockify's like, nah, it took you 37. And those of us with time blindness, it can be really helpful. It also has given me a way to see exactly how many words per minute or words per hour I'm writing, because it knows exactly how long I am in that document working. If I click out of that document to go look something up on Chrome, go look something up in Google, it will track that I'm in Google now. And I can use the exact amount of time that I'm in Word, divide that by, divide the number of words I've written by that amount of time, and then ta-da, I can get my words per hour really effectively. And that helps me dig into what patterns I'm seeing. So when on days that my words per hour are really low, what's going on? And kind of I can use all of this data to understand myself and shape my writing and my publishing and everything to be in a way that fits me. And it also can be kind of a boost because even on days where you're like, man, I didn't get anything done, you go into Clockify, you do a little bit of math, and you're like, oh, well, I was still writing at a pretty good clip there for a while. I was working for this amount of time on this project, and I got this much done. So it can actually help you feel better. And just the tracking time can be really helpful for a lot of different things. So that's kind of, my soapbox for Clockify. But if you're an entrepreneur or if you're an indie author who's trying to turn this into a business, understanding how much time you're spending on marketing, how much time you're spending on writing, how long does it actually take you to typeset your book, how much time are you spending responding to emails, all of that stuff really can help you plan your time and understand the real implications of the volume of time that you're spending on various different things, which is extremely useful data to have. And then finally, we're going to get into some of the marketing tools I use. Hootsuite, I've been using that for years. I'm grandfathered in back when they had a free tier, and they don't anymore, and I'm still somehow in there, and they like me, so I'm keeping it. I use it for my social media posting. It lets me create content and schedule it across all of my platforms at once without pulling out my hair. It's really very, very useful for that. I use the AI to kind of help me figure out what to post about things. I will ask the AI, hey, I wrote this blog post. Can you check this out? And then spit out some suggestions for social media posts based on this blog post. And it'll be like, boop. And then I'll tweak it and so on. But I'm only using it to give me advice on things that I wrote. I'm not using it to try and steal things from other people. It also will do things like help you choose hashtags. It can help you select hashtags that are correspond with what you're saying. And it does a whole bunch of neat stuff that can be really helpful. I also use it to help me sprinkle my posts with emojis because I'm old school and don't tend to use emojis as much as the modern age. You damned kids, get off my lawn. I've got a cane, I'll just shake it in your general direction. I don't hate emojis, but I'm still back in the smiley faces or a colon and a parenthesis generation. Back in the early days of the internet when we had to make our own emojis uphill in the snow both ways. So it helps me with that. Then the next one I want to mention is Canva. If you aren't familiar with Canva, you probably should be. Even the free tier has a lot of really useful stuff. It's got a fantastic stock library, stock images, that allows you to create social media posts and images and stuff with very little effort. It's not as robust as Affinity Photo for editing and real work, and I certainly wouldn't. Their video editing isn't great. I still use DaVinci Resolve for that. I don't have DaVinci Resolve on this list because it's not really for my writing, but I use DaVinci Resolve for my video work, which again, I use the free version, it's fine. But it is extremely powerful, and it might melt your computer if you don't know what you're doing and try and do something so big. So I'm not going to recommend you necessarily get into it. But the video editing in Canva is downright clunky. I will admit that, whole cloth. It's downright clunky. But the photos and using, or like if you're just doing a really short like movement thing, you know, a background for an Instagram story or something, that's fine. It's great. Their stock library is fantastic, and I really like it. I also like that you can schedule social media posting in Canva directly, and Canva also exports to MailerLite, which is also on this list. It directly exports to MailerLite. It has a lot of neat integrations that can be super helpful. So Canva's fabulous, and they recently bought Affinity. So Canva and Affinity are getting ready to do some stuff, and I'm kind of hoping that I will be able to access my Canva stock library in Affinity Photo coming up. That would be fantastic. Another thing about Canva, I don't really use it, but it exists. They have an AI image generator based on their image library. Everything I have seen has been very upfront that they are doing it as ethically as possible. The people that are submitting images to their stock library are paid every time somebody uses those images to generate an AI image, and they track that stuff, so they get paid, is my understanding. So far as I can tell, if you're going to use AI image generation, Canva's a really good one, because from what I know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I know, they're doing it pretty ethically. They also have some tools that'll let you do text with AI, but I think they're not the best, but they work. I don't really use them though. Like, I've played with that stuff, but I haven't used it much. If you have a paid account with Canva, you get credits every month towards AI and can use it on those things. Mine are just kind of banking because, like I said, I don't really use it. And finally, one of the things that I really do like about Canva is if you're using their stock and you get like a takedown notice, like, hey, you don't have permission for this, you actually can go into Canva, find the license, and send it and be like, no, I am. So it protects you from the issues that can sometimes arise with stock and getting those takedown notices, which can be really, dangerous legally if you're not careful. So it provides you with kind of a shield and shows that you are using stock in their, in their stuff, and it's very good. I use it all the time. I use Canva for most of my social media posts that aren't just like the long form videos. I use it for YouTube thumbnails. I use it for Instagram stuff. I used it for certain kinds of reels and so on. So it's a very helpful tool, and it's also very inexpensive. So I strongly recommend it. The next one in my marketing checklist here is Carrd, Carrd. It's a it's kind of like Linktree, but I think it's prettier. I use it as a way to collect a bunch of links into a convenient space. My main card, I use that to send people to all my social media. Like, people can find all of my social media links on there. They can find my website, they can find my editing website, they can find my Neurodivergent Publishing Conference stuff, they can find links to the places I'm speaking. It's basically like a business card on steroids, and can send people to all of my stuff. It's really nice. I also have a secondary one that is a list of all my books to read links. So when people want to find my books, I can just send them that, here, this is all the stuff I'm part of, and they can click on it and then choose where to buy it. It's really nice, very easy. It's basically like just giving them a menu. And like, here, order off that, please. It's fantastic. The next piece of marketing recommendation I have is having a website. This one's kind of self-explanatory. Like, this tool is pretty basic, but you'd be amazed how many authors overlook this and just rely on social media instead of owning their own piece of digital real estate. My websites are incredibly important pieces of my online marketing presence, and they are places where people can go to find the most about me. They can hire me, find my books, learn who I am, and they're super important because as much as I love social media and as much as like this platform is important for me, and all the other ones are, if, say, Substack exploded tomorrow and went away, well, people could still find me on my website. And that kind of leads me into the next thing of this is MailerLite. Author newsletters are incredibly important. When you own your newsletter, you own your slice of digital real estate. You own that means of contacting that person. That's part of what you own. And that's super, super important because in an era where a website can go belly up, I mean, look what happened to Twitter, look what's happening to Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. Like, a lot of these sites are less stable than we imagine. Even Facebook, that's been around for a very long time now, it feels stable and certain, but it's not as certain as we would like. And algorithms change and ownership changes and so on. But if you have somebody's email address and you own that list, you own that list of email addresses legally, because please do not buy them. That is not good. You can still contact people even should all of the social media explode. So long as email exists, you can still reach people. And that is super duper important. So MailerLite is the email marketing system that I use personally. Their free version is, as I understand it, one of the most robust out there. There are others. There's ConvertKit. There's a whole bunch of them, and I like MailerLite. It has a lot of good tools, good price, provides a solid backbone for your newsletter. There are other options, but MailerLite's the one that I chose. The next one and the final one on this list for marketing is BookFunnel. For ARCs, advanced reader copies, for newsletter cookies, for all kinds of other things, BookFunnel is a great way to distribute files to people in a secure manner. Because they're watermarked, or you can set them up to be watermarked, so that if it ends up somewhere it shouldn't be, if it gets pirated, then you know where that file came from. I use BookFunnel for a number of things. It also has integrations into MailerLite, just like Canva does, and it's a great way to build out your list. You can find other authors on there, run promos, all kinds of good stuff, and it's great for all sorts of things. You can also use it for direct selling. Direct selling, which is something I'm kind of looking into getting into more and more as time goes on, and I think it's a thing a lot of indie authors are really looking at, with, again, how Amazon and these other places are just, it doesn't feel great. Direct selling means that the customer comes to me, buys the book from me. I get the most bang for my buck that way, because I don't have a distributor eating a huge chunk of my sale, and then they go on their merry way. It doesn't have the same discoverability as the big platforms do, but it's one of those things that if somebody really wants to support me personally and wants to make sure that I get the most money, direct sales is exactly the direction you want to go. I'm planning on maybe having a talk a little bit about direct selling coming up, maybe in one of my future episodes. I don't know enough about it myself, but I have some friends who are really making waves in the direct sales arena, and I think I may invite some of them to come talk on this podcast and have the opportunity to share what they know with you. And I think that we can, stay on this cutting edge of the industry together. If this list was useful to you, if you found it helpful, please add your own things down in the comments. If you have tools that you think I should know about and didn't cover, or if you're like, wow, I really hate that one, and here's why, please let me know why you do or don't like things down in the comments. And, like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. But finally, if you want more information like this, if you want to know more about, like, all the tools I recommend, what publishing can look like, how I write books, I've got 2 books out on the subject. There's How to Write the Damn Book and How to Publish the Damn Book. Both of them are available in ebook and paperback. They are available at all retailers. They're set up to be distributed wide, and you can also request them from your local library if you would like to. They are set up in Libby and Overdrive and, all of those. And if you would like to read them and don't have the money to pay for them, ask your local library to get a copy for you, and they can absolutely do that. It is accessible to them. So that's my elevator pitch. Like, those 2 books are relatively new, and I'm really pleased with them. They don't have a lot of reviews yet, but the people who've read them have said that they're great. And if this kind of stuff is what you're looking for, those books are it. And if you need a little bit more hand-holding and aren't really sure about buying a book and really want to just ask questions, feel free to contact me on my website, ehprobylski.com, and we can do some coaching. I do that all the time. So let me know, and like I said, down in the comments, let me know if there's tools I missed, things you think I really need to know exist, or if I covered something and said I loved it and you're like, no, this is actually a trash fire and here's why. Please let me know. And if you're not sure about whether or not something's going to work for you, ask questions. Like, feel free to ask me any questions about all these tools I've suggested. So I hope you have a great week. Please take care out there, be safe, and I will talk to you next week.